Hey there, in this quick start for Bounce Factory video, I'm going to show you what is in the settings panel and explain to you how Bounce Factory thinks while it is actually bouncing mixes. So I'm going to come down here and click on settings, and this will open up all of the settings for the app. There are three different sets of things going on here. One is the Snapshot data recall filter, one is the message settings, and one is just a very small setting for the undo queue. Talk about the undo queue first. You may have noticed that when you click Take Snapshot, there is an undo and redo button section up here. If I change anything in here, let's say I change the sample rate to 44.1, and then I want to undo that, I can do that. You get a full undo queue that will hold all of the changes that you make as you're making snapshots. So that's the first setting, pretty simple. We'll talk about alerts next. So you can be iMessaged, SMS'd, or emailed after each bounce pass and or after the job completes. And I like this quite a bit because I can keep an eye on my texts, and it says that mix pass 113 of 240 has finished, and I can check the times between, and I know that they're coming in. One cool thing is if you iMessage yourself, they won't come up on the lock screen of a phone. So you won't be bothered by them, but you can check on them. And that's quite cool. You can also put an email address in as your iMessage address if you'd like, and you can use an email address to be emailed. So you get any one of these types of messages, and you can have it after each bounce pass, as well as after the job completes, just to let you know whether there were any warnings. And the warnings could include that a bounce file name already existed, or it was unable to place it on a track, but the thing worked, and you'll get a really good idea of how everything went before having to race back to the studio. There's also a test button here that will send a test iMessage, SMS, or email so you can make sure that it's actually working. The next thing, though, is a more fundamental part of how Bounce Factory does the actual bouncing. So let's talk about the data that is being used to decide how the session should be set up when Bounce Factory bounces a mix. So the starting point for any bounce is the session itself. However you save the session is the base data for how all of the tracks will be set up, their volume, their inserts, their sends, everything. Now, every time you take a snapshot, Bounce Factory gets a little picture of how it was set up when you took the snapshot. And that's what will allow you to change certain settings to do more advanced workflows like printing vocal up or vocal down, which we haven't talked about. So I'm going to talk about it in this particular video. Then on top of that are the types of mix passes we've already set up where we're going to switch a playlist or solo some tracks or mute some tracks. Okay, so we start with however the session is saved. Then on top of that, we can recall any of the information in the snapshot data recall filter that is enabled. And then on top of that, we can mute or solo or change playlists on tracks. So let's say we're just printing the types of mixes we've already done in these quick start videos. So I'm not changing anything to do with input or output assignments or inserts or anything else in here. What I can do is just turn the filter off completely. What this will do is it will skip one of the steps that has to happen before each set of mix passes to ensure that the session is set up properly. And this will just make everything run faster, and the less the app has to do, the less often it will run into a Pro Tools error or something else going on. So if you're not changing any of these items compared to the way the session is saved, then you can just turn this off. If all you're doing is soloing, muting, or switching playlists based on the session, how you have it, this doesn't need to be on. Now, let's say you're doing a vocal up mix. So you've already taken the snapshot that has your main mix and your acapella and your instrumental and your TV and your basic stems. Then what you can do is, without saving a new session, you can go to, let's say, the vocal VCAs and change their level, and then take a new snapshot. When you do that, Bounce Factory will get a picture of the session, including those new volume levels, and that is how all of the mix passes will know about the volume in the session, so that if you turn on the filter, and we can turn everything off except volume if you want, when we bounce, any mix pass from any snapshot, it will restore the volume for all of the tracks in the session before soloing or muting, but after it's opened up the session. So when you're doing this, what you would want to do is you take a snapshot for your main mixes, then change the volume, take a snapshot for your vocal up or vocal down or whatever it is. But then before you save the session, make sure you put the volume back how it should be for the main mix passes. Now, Bounce Factory will recall the volume for every single mix pass as it needs to be, and it will bounce them in such an order that your main mix pass will be the one that's bounced last, so the volumes will be set back, the mutes and the solos will be undone, the playlist will be put back, and the automation mode will be set back. That's pretty much it. You have very granular control, you have lots of different categories, and then you have subcategories within the categories. This is just completely up to you how you set it. One thing I do want to mention, as of version 1.41, Melodyne ARA Elastic settings are not supported within the app, and if you try and turn them on, you'll get a message telling you why. There are some issues with Pro Tools in importing ARA settings for Melodyne. All kinds of stuff can happen. So if you want to bounce with different tuning, let's say on your vocals, just save sessions and then do snapshots for each of those sessions. But otherwise, you can change the sends, and all the rest of these settings are there. One other thing I just want to point out, if you are not already a subscriber, then don't worry about this yet. But if you are either on the trial, which is free and 30 days and full featured, or you are a subscriber to Bounce Factory, please join the Facebook users group. You can use this button here or just search for it on Facebook. And this is where we're going to discuss what users would like to see in Bounce Factory and what would make their lives easier. All right, I hope these videos helped you out, and there are longer videos that delve into a lot more detail, and there are always the forums if you have other questions, and the user group. Thanks a lot.